For this, we invite Ananga Manjari to share a few short words of Mangalacharan. Why not? Please bless today's meeting with some sacred invocation.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Good evening or good day. Yeah, may the sweet Lord, that it's in our hearts and also in everywhere around us, bless us with honest and heartful questions, and may we also be able to hear from you, Maharaj, and from each other, and grow together.
English. Thank you. So, we are ready to begin now with our Mangalacharan in place, being blessed by this wondrous reminder by Ananga Manjari. May we be blessed by the questions and whatever happens to flow through us, to each one of us, in loving reciprocation, in intimate Sangha. So greetings from Ananda Ashram. As you can see probably from the most usual background, I'm back here in North Carolina, United States, after sharing last weekend. I think I was still in New Jersey. So I've been with my mother for the last 2 weeks almost, and she left yesterday. She returned to Argentina, arriving today in the morning with some little adventures in between, in the plane and timing, and almost losing flights and the dog in between, but she's back home safely and happy. So we've had a very interesting time together with some other friends traveling and sharing. So very happy to be back here for me also, to concentrate a little bit more these coming months and starting the year focusing on future writing projects and podcasts, and of course stillness and cultivation of the inner life, which is always very necessary always, but especially not traveling that much, I will say, at least for me, helps me to gain that focus and grounding. So I'm very excited about that new chapter opening. Every new chapter is exciting for its own reason, so this one as well is not exception to the rule. So you're more than welcome to, of course, share whatever you may like to share today, and bring to the table any questions, doubts, sharings. And I'm seeing a few hands, digital hands raised, so of course we'll begin there. Mayapur Sangam, then Kanupriya from Germany, then Kanupriya from Scotland, living in Scotland, and then Sham Sundari. Welcome, Sham Sundari. Are you in Ananda Dham now or in Switzerland? But in Switzerland. Okay. So we'll begin with Mayapur Sangam from Austria. We have Europe taking over today the questions, it seems. It's okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question according emotions and how can they help us on the spiritual path. And until now I have the understanding to deal with emotions in a healthy way so that they have a message for us and we should not classify them in good or bad, because every emotion has its place, and we should act accordingly so that we can expand our vessel, that we can be a servant of love. And then I had that thought, but can we think that the emotions we feel can be expressed in service for the pleasure of Sri Krishna? So if I feel happiness, can I say that if I feel happiness, it's for the pleasure of Sri Krishna's happiness? But then I was thinking, okay, then it needs to be done with all the emotions. So if I feel sadness or anger, that should be the same. And then I'm struggling because I have still that gray and that black and white thinking, of can I express anger for Krishna so that he is pleased? Or is that thought even allowed, or am I losing myself there?
Okay, thank you. You are not going crazy, Maya Prasanga. Let's begin there, if it helps in any way. It's a very, commonsensical question, right? If we hear that there are no bad emotions, I think there is some microphone on back to us apart from mine. So if we hear that there are no actually bad emotions, but just things we do with the emotions that can be bad for sure, but not necessarily should be bad, then the question is, okay, how to express every given emotion for the love of God, so to say, in a way that is favorable to our connection with the divine and with everything. And as we were talking a few days ago, when I visited Namrasa Prabhu and we recorded a podcast, and next day he was publishing it. That was pretty fast. And I had this conversation, maybe you saw it with Doug. And at one point we were talking about emotions, and this is this one way of reading the word emotion as energy in motion, emotion. No? So something is in motion, something is moving, or something is asking for expression, or something is begging to be expressed. It's a type of emotion that needs to be expressed in a certain way, a type of movement, emotion. So again, there are no bad energy movements. The bad things we can do with that is to repress them, to suppress them, and then many times we end up imploding, or eventually there's too much repression, it's exploding. So all those things are mismanagement of the energy in motion. But there are the energy in itself that is moving, that is trying to express itself through us, is not intrinsically bad. So that applies here, and that applies even in the spiritual world, in the Highgate realm, right? When we hear how all this, and we talked about that also in this conversation, how Rupa Goswami defines all these different emotions that for many of us sound negative, like anger, fear, even envy, having their place in transcendence, in eternity, in the context of love. So love can host and hold all emotional dispositions, all these energy movements, energy events, so to say. So if we want to enter that realm, we better start to train ourselves here and now. How can we allow ourselves to express our emotions in a way that is satisfying to Krishna? And I would say that the very fact, and that is something that Prahlad Maharaj mentions in the Bhagavatam, which is very hopeful, and it's very similar to a prayer, famous prayer by Thomas Merton, that he says basically, I'm not so sure, Thomas Merton will say, I'm not so sure if what I'm doing is pleasing to you, God, but I trust that having the intention of pleasing you indeed pleases you. And Prahlad Maharaj basically says that in one verse that Sri Radha Swami specifically comments and says, Bhagavan is so merciful that even if we have the intention of pleasing him, that's pleasing to him. Even if we are not perfect in the performance, in whatever we are doing, how we are presenting the offering, whatever that may be, even if there are some discrepancies or shortcomings in the presentation, Bhava Grahi Janardana, which means Janardhan or Krishna, Bhava Grahi, he's Bhava Grahi, Sara Grahi. He's grasping only the essence of our presentation. He's an essence seeker. He doesn't see anything else. So I would say that's how merciful Bhagavan is. Even if I still do not know very much, okay, how to offer my anger for Krishna's pleasure, is that even possible? Even if I'm having that concern in a healthy way, that's already pleasing to Krishna. Again, not to stop there, right? Not to say, oh, that already pleases Krishna, then I don't need to do anything else apart from that, and nobody's saying that. All this is just saying how mercifully disposed the Sweet Absolute is. That if you already have an honest concern about how to offer whatever in the best way to him, already that in itself is pleasing to him. What to speak, all that it comes from that honest concern. So just asking, okay, sometimes I have anger. It's an energy, one of the different energies in movement, in motion, emotion. Can I offer anger in a way that is pleasing to Krishna? Yes. But again, that doesn't mean become a serial killer, go to the street and fight with people for the love of God, find the perfect justification. Because everything in principle can become in potential spiritual bypassing. But as I try to give some examples, in radical personalism, for example, I remember mentioning that anger could be expressed to set boundaries. To set boundaries. If someone is mistreating you, you become angry. No, probably. And it's good. In the sense that that's a particular energy that it gets activated, that not necessarily needs to be expressed in the way of attacking the person, but you may feel anger at being mistreated. So that helps to set boundaries, to recognize there is something unhealthy going on here, and I need to take a stance to have some dignity and self-love, to protect myself as a sadhaka in the service of Krishna. I'm not an isolated unit. So I am expressing my anger by setting boundaries in the context of self-love in bhakti. And that's pleasing to Krishna. That's one example. Of course, we could go and explore so many unlimited, endless potential scenarios of what to do with every given emotion in every given circumstance. Of course, we don't have time to do that here. But yeah, the thing in principle is that it's not only that I can offer my joy to Krishna and then he's happy. No, Krishna is only pleased when I'm happy, because sometimes we may read that as such, and I'm a devotee, I'm supposed to always be happy, and only then Krishna is pleased. So basically all the considerable, abundant other varieties of emotional expression become labeled as non-pleasing to Krishna. So whenever all those weathers of the heart come, many times we feel bad about ourselves, we don't see them as things that potentially can please Bhagavan, and we just seek, in those cases, we may just seek to be happy at all costs, and you become a harmony junkie or something. Okay? You have to be all day like, la la la, haribol, and we become very flat, very shallow in our personality, because if you can only experience happiness, that's very boring. I mean, if you pay attention to the great souls, they are not only experiencing happiness, they also experience wonder and concern and pain and suffering in certain ways, compassion and anger. I mean, all these are, again, eternal rasas in the spiritual world. Karuna rasa, Rodra rasa, Vibhatsa rasa, disgust, and so on and so forth, apart from the usual ones. So yeah, we today this expression came to my mind, probably in the shower. That's one of the places where the greatest insights can come to your life, so pay attention there. And something like, we have to become like a fully individuated bouquet to be offered for the pleasure of the sweet absolute. A fully individuated bouquet, no? With all the colors and forms and aromas and shapes, all the individuated different parts of our individual existence being fully expressed, being fully allowed to bloom, to blossom, for that to be a beautiful offering for the pleasure of Krishna, for the pleasure of everything in reality. So yeah, it takes creativity for sure, right? If we feel sad, okay, how do I transform my sadness into an offering? And again, you can you can be honest. Just being honest about acknowledging your sadness is a sign of honesty, and that pleases Krishna. Krishna is pleased with honesty, with authenticity, acknowledging where you are, acknowledging your adhikar, where you stand, what you are capable of, what you are incapable of. All that, Krishna is pleased with that. I'm not saying that's the final thing, the final offering we have to offer, but that's an important one. We shouldn't underestimate Krishna's capacity to be pleased with us. Let's put it that way. No, we should not underestimate Krishna's capacity to be pleased with us. Now, we should not think, until and unless I become an absolutely perfect, immaculate performer, Krishna won't be pleased with me. That's an insult to Krishna's capacity to derive pleasure from so many directions. That's also not an excuse to be complacent and do as little as we can, because Krishna is so capable of being pleased with me that I don't need to do much. No, we are not saying that. But we don't take things to one extreme nor the other. Again, one extreme will be, unless and until I become fully perfect and immaculate, Krishna won't be pleased with me. The other extreme is, oh, Krishna is so generous and merciful, he becomes very easily pleased, so I don't need to do much. Again, both are two extremes, and we want to thread the middle path. The middle path, always. So yeah, it takes creativity at every given moment. Where we are navigating the different emotions, energy in motions. Now I'm being moved by this particular energy, with this particular feeling, emotion. How to make a bouquet out of this? How to make an offering out of this? How to creatively engage anger, pain, bewilderment, or so many positive, joy, wonder, whatever, for the pleasure of Krishna, because any of these things can be engaged for Krishna. Any of these things, we could use them in ways that we become distracted by that. It's not that some people become overwhelmed in suffering and they forget about God, or you can be overwhelmed by suffering and take more shelter in God and pray more deeply. Some people may become very joyful and happy and remember God in gratitude, and some people may become joyful and happy and forget God because they're having such a good time. Yeah, in potential, everything can happen. So that speaks how, I'm just giving a few examples, but that speaks how neither suffering or joy or all the possible emotions in between are in themselves a cause for remembering or forgetting Krishna, but it's just how we deal with that particular energy. And all of them remain available to become offerings to Bhagavan. Ideally, in their original structure, they are meant to be offered to Bhagavan. That's the actual potential of everything. Everything is offerable to the sweet absolute. But again, sadhana bhakti, we need to become skillful. One of the qualities of the devotee is daksha. Sometimes daksha is translated as expert, and sometimes expert is further translated as you have to become perfect externally in performing everything, and you go crazy and neurotic. But daksha means another way of expert. Daksha means skillful, creative, in how to engage things like the ones we are talking about here, among other things. So yeah, and sometimes again, it requires time, sitting and staying with that particular emotion, gaining emotional intimacy, as I also like to say, because emotions are not something that comes suddenly, and suddenly I'm already offering them in the most perfect possible way to Krishna. Sometimes I need to really spend some time with those particular weathers of the heart, get to know each other, to know how can I possibly make this an offering to Bhagavan. You have to develop the skill, getting to know each other, getting to coexist with that particular energy in motion, anger, sadness, because sometimes we are expert at not feeling things. So you basically don't know what's visiting you. It knocks your door and you push that under the carpet or leave as if it doesn't exist. And still the whole thing is there. So we need to get familiarity with all the emotional landscape so we can, we can have more possibilities of making further offering through all of that, offering ourselves through each one of those emotions. At the end of the day, it is us who is the final offering. So all these emotions are vehicles that facilitate us the offering of the self, as the body is another vehicle that is there to facilitate the offering of the self. I always say material energy, whether we speak about material body, matter in its physical form, in its psychic dimension, it all belongs to the category of Maya Shakti, Maya Devi, Prakriti, and that energy has been described in scripture as a great highest Vaishnavi. So matter, psychic, physical, emotional, it's already an energy that is offered in the service of Bhagavan. Only me, I am the one who has not been offered. So all these emotions could be seen as ways that we can offer ourselves through them. So they are trying to help us to facilitate the offering of myself. Yes, through anger, yes, through suffering, yes, through joy and wonder and gratitude and this and that. That's why Krishna says in the Gita, when the mind is under control, the mind is your best friend. So that doesn't mean that there are no more of these emotions. It means that you know how to engage each one of them as an offering, in service, as something that connects rather than isolates. That's what it means that your mind has become your best friend. Not that you only feel joy and ecstasy all day, but do you know how to see everything in connection and engage everything in seva. How does it feel, Maya Pursang? What do you think?
Yeah, it feels good to hear all of that, but it feels not really integrated yet completely. I don't know if I have something where I still hooked on that, and I think it needs time to digest and explore it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm never expecting any one of you to tell me, yeah, Maharaj, perfectly understood, totally realized. Let's go to the next lesson. I mean, this can take lifetimes, literally. So we are not here to rush into having things done and checking boxes and finishing, but trying to first get a proper grasp of what we are dealing with. And the proper grasp may take more time, as we always say. And then the actual practice and integration may be quicker, but we need to have a proper grasp of what we are talking about to begin with. Remember Einstein when he said, like, I have 60 minutes to solve the problem. Give me 55 to understand the actual problem, and then 5 to solve the problem. But first I need to understand which is the actual problem, what I'm dealing with here. Because many times the actual problem is that we don't know what's the actual problem. So we try to deal with what we think is the actual problem, but that's not the actual problem. And that is the actual problem. So anyhow, thank you for the question, and I hope whatever we shared can shed some light for all of us, including me, of course. We are all navigating these various weathers of the heart on any given day, and again, advancing in bhakti doesn't mean that you stop feeling things and your emotional spectrum becomes reduced just to one thing, one stuff, but that you can go through all those weathers in an enlightened way, in a connected way. And it's a gradual process. So speaking of which, I invite all of you for a few moments to reflect together in community, in communion, about our own thoughts and experiences with our emotional landscape in our breakout rooms. I would like also to rebaptize it breakthrough rooms, wishing that there is a breaking through, but before that maybe a breakout, break open, break down, hopefully breakthrough. So for a few minutes, we'll be inviting you there. Back to us, we'll open the rooms. You can select that, and we'll be back then for the remaining sharings. Welcome back. You have been ejected from the mercy chamber, hopefully into another mercy chamber, so there's no loss. But looking forward to whatever you have experienced sharing between each one of you. So we'll continue with the next question, next raised hand by Kanupriya from Germany first, and then we go to Kanupriya from, how may I say, Switzerland, Scotland? Okay. Yes. Please, you can unmute yourself.
I have a question. It's actually a follow-up question of Tattva Darshini's question last time. And if I understood right, or if I remember right, you answered in the way that you mentioned the final goal for us is to love everybody, but if we are not on this level, maybe in some cases it's better to take a distance from some persons and yeah. So my question is how to find out when is the moment to take a distance from a certain person, because maybe we could still learn something out of the relationship, even if it's difficult, even if we hurt each other or something, or maybe it's our karma to stay with this person, a special relationship, or maybe in case of husband and wife, maybe their children, it's better for them to have both parents, and even if they quarrel, or if you are in a good job, maybe it's better to stay in the job and to suffer in a relationship with your boss or whatever. I mean, there's so many considerations to make. So how to find out, okay, now I really should take a distance, separate, or whatever, or is it better to go on to learn, to go through, and is there a common rule at all? I don't know. I mean,
So we have one of the how-to questions. Yeah, of course, there is no common rule because each case is unique and each circumstance is unique, and each one of us is in a very different situation. And what for some person is a very healthy, or not very healthy, but a sustainable scenario that they can, as you say, thrive and grow and learn even in a very difficult situation. Not everyone has that capacity, and for some people it's healthy to remain there and grow and learn in that particular level of challenge, but for some other people that will be too much. No, it's like, again, going back to what we said before, the beauty of acknowledging your adhikar. Where are you standing? Like if you are doing, like, how they call it, weightlifting. So for some people, lifting a certain weight will be easy. For some people will be challenging, but possible. And for other people will be maybe not impossible, but damaging. And for some other people will be impossible. They won't be even able to move the weight. So just to give an analogy of situations in life that carry certain weight. Right? So sometimes we have to trust our inner, as Srila Siddhar Maharaj will say, we all have an inner, what's the word he uses? An inner, something like an inner detector, so to say, that allows us to know. No? So rather than over depending on people telling us, do this, do that. I'm not saying that we cannot look for advice. Of course, yes, and we need that. But we should also trust our God-given faculties to discern at every given moment what's best for me. Because at the end of the day, if there is someone who knows what's best for me, that's me. Though many times I don't have a clue what's best for me. But when I don't have a clue what's best for me, I over depend on someone else to tell me what's best for me, that can be complicated, because the other person may say anything and everything, and I may accept just because I don't have a clue what's best for me. And maybe the other person says something with good intention, but that may not be the best for me. So we all need to work, especially all of us, most of us here are not like 7 years old, 10 years old, 1 year old. We're all human adults. So we all need to work in becoming actual adults and developing discernment, which doesn't mean suddenly we are perfect and every decision is totally accurate, and no, but you have to exercise the muscle and train the tool and become what the Bhagavatam calls Desha Kala Vibhagavit, which means a knower of time, place, and circumstance. Desha Kala Vibhagavit. Bit means a knower or a discerner of what to do at any given moment, in any given place, which may be very different from the next time and the next moment and the next place, which may be very different from what the other person is invited to do at that same time, place, and moment. So everything is radically personal. Everything is very specific. So there are no easy answers, magical formulas. Of course, at the same time, yes, saying all that I said, and given the capacities we have, we should all try to grow and learn in the face of challenges. And again, a challenge for me may be something that for the other person is not a challenge, or for some other person is impossible, but for me it's a challenge. So we all need to find that sweet spot that lies between what I call the comfort zone and the panic zone, which is the learning zone. Comfort zone, not healthy to stay too long there. Yeah, it's cozy, but it can be a trap if you stay too much. And panic zone, I don't think I need to explain that. So in between these two, you have learning zone, but it's not fully comfortable, but it's not fully uncomfortable either. So there is some balance, there is some learning, some safety, some grounding. At the same time, there is enough challenge. I'm pushed outside of conformism and complacency. I'm invited to grow and to learn. At the same time, I'm comforted. I have some security, so I can navigate this, again, middle path, not one extreme, nor the other. And and even if, so for each one, this will be different, right? Learning zone will be different. From what's learning zone from you, maybe panic zone for someone else. Or what's learning zone for you may be comfort zone for someone else. And what's panic zone for someone is comfort zone for someone else. And all these possible combinations. So it requires, again, personal introspection. We all have this internal, again, going to Sri Radha, this is internal, like, he will say something like tasting machine. like capacity to experience. Is this panic zone? I mean, I think if we are getting panicky, we will realize that we are not that stupid to not know that I'm becoming overwhelmed. We have to trust that we can know that. And if we become stagnant and complacent, if we pay enough attention, we can realize, yeah, this feels stagnant. And when you are being challenged in a way that is sustainable, I think we all know how that feels if we choose to pay attention. We may just need enough support in our lives for us to trust our own capacities. Sometimes the role of the environment is not necessarily to tell us what to do, but to trust us that we can discern what's the best for us in our life. That's real empowerment. So, so again, we have to discern. And even if you gave a few examples or a few one-liners that sometimes may appear, especially in devotional circles, okay, it's your karma to stay there. And again, what do we mean by it's your karma, right? Of course, something may be my karma, but that doesn't mean that because of that I will stay there, or I will be passive. Not like I remember when I was a few years ago, as some of you may know, and no need to go into details, but I was like publicly, falsely accused of things that I never said nor done. And of course I can say, okay, I could say it was my karma that someone is saying that about me. But because it's my karma doesn't mean that what's being said is true. So therefore, that doesn't mean that because it's my karma, and probably I've done that to someone in the past, who knows, probably, that doesn't mean that I have to comply to the lies being told about myself and say, oh yeah, what you said is true. No, you need to stand for the truth. Because probably if you did that to someone else in the past, means you didn't stand for the truth in that time. So now I having the chance to stand for the truth and redeem the karmic cycle, right? So if I'm, all this to say, if I'm, I don't know, okay, someone got married to someone in life. And and you can say, okay, we are together because of karma. That's one way of labeling things, as long as you see the word karma in a healthy way, right? Because many times for us, karma entails so many negative associations. And karma is nothing but positive. Yes, karma is not a bad thing. Karma is it's a law of education and responsibility to teach us ultimately to learn to love, to grow and change. It's not chastisement, it's not vengeance, it's not a cold revenge act by God on us. No, we should be careful not to misread karma. So if I'm with someone karmically, that doesn't mean, oh, what to do? We are destined to be entangled for 7 lifetimes or whatever, and we are drawing each other down further and further, and you develop this fatalistic view of things. And of course, the more you see things like that, the most miserable will be the experience, and the more karma you will be creating with each other. So, but of course, if you're in a situation that is abusive, let's take it to an extreme example, and it's clearly abusive, even if by karma you are going through that or you chose that person for whatever reason, doesn't mean that you just need to stay there consuming the abuse passively. You may need to take a stance. And again, I'm talking in general. We are not talking here about any specific situation. That will require a specific treatment and the details of every given situation. And many times, one more thing that is coming to my mind, though it may sound like I'm going somewhere else, but it's connected to the topic. Because you started the question with that, and that's related to the question from last week. Yes, sometimes in relationships, we may need to take a distance. That doesn't mean that we will never connect again with that person. Distance is not eternal distance, maybe a temporary necessity to gain perspective from the distance. That's the very meaning of the word detachment, or the very implication. It's not indifference or coldness. I'm taking a distance to gain perspective. I'm taking a distance to get a bigger picture. Not only about who you are in our relationships, but who am I? We were talking all in the sake of love. Okay, we want to love everyone. We want to develop love. And sometimes taking a distance from someone helps us to explore our approach to love and our approach to relationships. Like, for example, we were talking yesterday with Bhakti Rasa, how, sometimes we take for granted that we understand what love is, but we don't take the time to play out the implications of what it means to love someone. To give you an example, and to be honest, and we talked about that the other day. Remember when I mentioned something along the lines of many times we love people for who they are in relationship to us, and we do not love people for who they are. So it's quite utilitarian. So I'm going to say something, basically the same thing from another perspective. Like, many times we love our own version of people, not the other person. So who I think you are, that's my idea about you many times is what I say I love, what I like. But when in time I start to discover that you are something different to my idea about you, many times we get uncomfortable and we take distances. But all that speaks about not the other person, but our very conditional and partial approach to love. Not to condemn anyone, that's how you begin to learn about love. You begin from a very primitive place. Loving someone because you think they are what you need them to be for you. But the other person is an individual, an absolutely individual being, so to say. It's not tied to be what you need them to be. Because if not, that's not a healthy relationship. Again, we may begin there. We are not in Golok Vrindavan. We are learning to love. And gradually we learn to love. Okay, because to be honest, if you go deep into many relationships, you may realize that many people, I'm sorry if I will use strong words, but many people do not care about you. They only care about their own version of who you are for them. But when you try to make clear to them, hey, I'm not who you think I am this. Many people is not interested in taking the trouble of investigating all that. They want you to be their version of yourself, their own version of. They want to keep you in the box. Again, I'm not saying they are bad intention, evil people. It's just they don't know how to love perfectly and fully. And probably none of us know how to love perfectly and fully. So it's part of the journey. I'm saying all this to normalize the conversation, not to stigmatize anyone. But this is all tied to what we are talking about, in the sense that sometimes we may have problems in relationships and we may feel the need of a distance. And many times it's not because of what we think it is. We sometimes misdiagnose the problem. And many times it's because I don't know who the other person is, and I don't care to take the time to know who the other person is. And I'm projecting an idea of the other person. And I want the other person to keep quiet in that idea and in that box. Because the moment they start to become themselves, I become challenged. And I start to be confronted with the reality that I don't know who the other person is. Probably I don't know who I am. Probably I don't know how to love. And all that sounds messy and complicated. But that's the only way you can learn to love. So yeah, I'm saying all this because it's important. And we do that all the time in all directions. You may do that with your mom, with your father, with your children, with yourself, with your brother, with your sister, with your partner, and you ultimately with God. No? We have our ideas about Krishna, and when Krishna tries to be who he actually is, we don't like that too much. No. We want Krishna to be a quiet boy inside my divine box, be this, and don't go outside of the box. Good luck with asking Krishna not go outside of the box. Right? When Krishna becomes too mischievous, we close the altar quickly. No? So he doesn't start to show up for who he actually is. We want to keep God predictable, controllable. Maya, that's called in Sanskrit, right? Maya, that which can be measured, that which can be controlled. And that translates as illusion. In other words, it's not possible to do that. As hard as we try. We have to allow reality to be what it is. We have to allow people to be who they are. And we have to learn to love them for who they are. It's not that I love you as long as you remain being who I want you to be. That's toxic. No? I love you as long as you remain my own version of who I think you are. That's delusional. I love you as long as you don't show up for who you really are and become what I want you to be. I mean, that's the very definition of whatever. A cultish, codependent, dangerous relationship. But to be honest, we do that all the time. Maybe in minute doses, and we don't frame it in the way I'm framing it, because if not, we may be put in jail or something. But we all probably as conditioned souls undergone those daily erosions of normalcy, as Brian McLaren will call it. Daily erosions of normalcy. They are not big erosions, so nobody says like, wow, that's terrible. There are slight, mild daily erosions, but gradually, they get bigger and bigger, and then you suddenly have a serial killer or a totalitarian regime. Oh, how this happened? It's not a sudden thing. There are these things happening more and more. So anyhow, I don't want to sound like I'm going somewhere else, but it's all connected. So I think it's important for us to take time. We always like to talk about unconditional love. This is it. And this is it. Krishna is loving us not for who he wants us to be. And that's another misconception many times tied in our idea. For us, surrender means I give up and I want who Krishna wants me to be. But who say that Krishna thinks that way? Krishna is not like, I want you to be this and that, and only then I will be pleased. We are projecting that onto him because that's how we generally relate here to each other. But Krishna wants you to be who you are and all that you can be, and wants to facilitate that potential. And that's how he approaches us, how he invites us to approach him in return, and how he invites us to approach everyone and everything in return, to allow things to bloom as they are. The Bhagavad Gita as it is. Everything else as it is as well. Not as we will like it to be. Not as I need it to be. As it is. Kanupriya, as it is. Is Kanupriya there? I'm not seeing her.
Yes, I'm here.
I don't see you.
I see you. I see everybody else.
Okay, sorry. There you are. There you are. I don't know if that helped.
Whew. I feel quite.
I talked in general, right? Sometimes there may be a question behind the question or something more personal that may not be the time and place to address publicly, but I'm talking. And because generally many times we have questions that are more close to us or close to someone we know, but we may present it in a general way, which is, of course, proper. So I hope the general addressing help to touch if there is anything more specific there.
What struck me very much now, is this the right word? Struck me very much? I don't know. Is that last time I asked a question, it was about gopis and taking risk and so on. And you mentioned exactly the same point. And now I ask a totally different question. And again, I felt, wow, this is lesson 2 about the same topic. And then I felt, wow, it went even deeper than last time. And then it seems that there's something to learn from me. Thank you very much. And of course, all the other points. This was really a very good answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And of course, there's something to learn for each one of us. So thank you for bringing that. And hopefully each one of us is taking their lessons. And in order to further churn and actualize that, let's go for a few more minutes again to breakout rooms and share with each other whatever inner chord strings were touched in our being while discussing this particular topic. And then we'll return with Kanupriya's, the other Kanupriya's, or our other Kanupriya's question. So see you in a few minutes. Welcome back, and again, hoping you've had a very successful churning. Again, our tradition, I love this expression, churning. In the Bhagavatam, we have this churning of the ocean of milk, and again, the whole symbology behind that is like the more you churn, the more valuable items come. It all converging into the nectar of immortality, with so many things happen in the churning, and before that comes in the bath, and some other things come which are not so nice. Like implying that's part of the process, right? Chetadarpanam Arjanam. You start to churn, and some dragons and fiery serpents come to begin with, and then eventually it all converges into the sweet nectar of immortality. But yeah, it's all part of the churning. It's all one churning. So it's good to to keep all that integrated. So I hope you had good journey. And next we will continue following the order of the digital hands raised with Kanupriya. Our second Kanupriya hour. I don't want to own anyone, just to make it more intimate, from Switzerland, but living in Scotland. I assume you're in Scotland now, so welcome, Kanupriya. You can unmute yourself. And then we go to Syam Sundar.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, and everyone. Yes, I would like to ask a question originally stimulated also by one of the satsangs we had, not last one, I think was the one before. And there we were talking about free will. And I was contemplating about that. And I came to a conclusion that we don't have actually a free will. So I would like to ask, maybe I can change my mind again, but right now I feel there is no such thing as free will. And I came to the conclusion, I was thinking, as long as we are under the law of karma, so my understanding is, as long as a soul is not fully surrendered, Krishna cannot guide us directly. But the law of karma is his indirect guidance. It's his law, but as long as we are not fully surrendered, he cannot interact or guide us directly. So as an example, like a king, if he has a kingdom, all the people living in the castle around him, they get direct orders of the king or direct guidance. So all the souls that are the Jivas that are with Krishna, the Jivas that are around him, with him, they get his direct guidance. But as long as we are conditioned souls and under the law of karma, we can make choices, but the law of karma is somehow always stronger, because as you also said, Maharaj, it is helping us to develop. It's not something bad, but it's somehow an indirect guidance of Krishna by that law. But we can make choices within this, but we don't have really a free will. So, and if we are then finally somewhere in this direct contact with Krishna, being a servant in whatever rasa we will be in, there we are ourselves. We are who we truly are, an eternal servant. And because we are who we truly are, we do not want to do anything else than serve. Because of our prem, we want to express that we are eternal servants, Satchit Ananda in full evolvement. But that also includes, I don't want to do anything else. So free will is not needed. So at the end, it's not needed because I am who I am. In the middle, I'm in the law, under the law of karma, where I cannot really have a free will. I can make choices. Now we can ask, is it maybe at the beginning? So there has to be a certain moment, but because we never have been with Radha Krishna, we are these little particles coming out of the Tatastha Shakti. So we have not been there. So how can I have a free will if I don't know how it is there? I cannot make a choice. So there is maybe also just a decision, but how can I have free will if I don't know truly who it is to be there? So my conclusion is there is no such thing as free will, but maybe I'm totally wrong.
Thanks for qualifying your whole question with maybe I'm totally wrong. That's an important... I'm not saying you are totally wrong. I'm saying it takes courage to say that. Before I say anything, could I ask you if you could, because your whole question is around free will. So what's free will? For you, at least, how you understand free will? Because we are talking about something, but I want to be clear about what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. free will is for me bigger than having a choice. It feels like if I have a free will, then I know about the choices, every choice I have. And then I can make a choice towards something. And because I am limited in what I can really perceive or my whole thing, as long as I'm under the law of this karma, I don't see as far. So, and this law is stronger. Free will is like at the beginning when the Jiva turns toward either towards Radha Krishna or towards the material world, where the Jiva decides, I want to enjoy myself. And that's why it becomes under the law of karma. It gets entangled. There, I would say the soul would have to know what is it then to be with Krishna, to make a choice. That would be free will.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, it's one question, but there are, of course, many layers to the question, and it's a big topic, and it's an important topic. We have talked about free will many times, and we shall need to continue talking about free will many more times. We should not, how to say, easily exhaust any given topic, right? It's not like, okay, now it's over. No more free will questions, guys, for the rest of 2026. No, it doesn't work like that. Many times, on the contrary, right? Someone asks about something, someone says something about it, and that creates a whole chain of further questions about that for a long time. And that may be required, so that's always welcome. So thank you for your inquiries. Okay, so let's see where to begin. You gave your own definition or your own idea of free will, and I know it's a tricky term when we translate. We use different languages and different words in different languages, because free will gives this sense of free will, which basically I can do or desire whatever I want to do or desire. Free will in Sanskrit is called, what we translate as free will in Sanskrit by Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami, his Paramatma Sandarbha. Let's go to some of our foundational scriptures. The SATSANG of Sri Jiva Goswami, which is this sixfold treatise about the nature of reality, basically, and where he talks about Sambandha, Videya, and Prayojan, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, Krishna, Bhakti, the Jiva, material world, Prem, and everything in between. So in his Paramatma Sandarbha, where part of speaking about Paramatma is to speak about the Jiva, since Jiva Shakti and Maya Shakti are presided over by Paramatma. So he mentions, from a list of, coming originally from the Padma Purana, a list of 21 qualities that every single Jiva, each one of us, possess intrinsically, that makes us who we are, basically. And one of those 21 is kartritva, which some people may translate as free will. Generally, the exact words is agency. Agency. I don't know if you understand, everyone understands the word agency. So agency basically has to do with we have the ability to make choices. We can make choices. We can be conditioned. Of course, our choices may be influenced, as you say, by the gunas, however we may like to call it, by the karmic momentum, choices we may have taken before, and now take us in a direction where we tend to take the same choices again. Now let's, I don't know, give a classical example. I don't know, someone may choose to have a drink. Probably that eventually you will say, okay, I have another drink. And I have another drink. And eventually you become a chronic alcoholic. It will be quite difficult for you to say, I won't have any drink anymore in my life, because you already created some momentum for getting drunk, basically. So you will have, your choices will tend to go in that direction. That doesn't mean you cannot choose something else. It means just that you have chosen in a way that has created some momentum that will take your choices in some direction, but still you have the opportunity to choose something else. I'm reminded of these words by Viktor Frankl, his famous Man's Search for Meaning. When he is speaking without using the term free will, but for those of you who read this book, on the basis of which he developed his logotherapy, his whole psychological system based on the finding of purpose and meaning. And when he was so restricted in the choices he could make, right, in Auschwitz, in the concentration camp, still he realized, I have free will. No, I can choose. As much as I cannot choose about so many things here, I cannot choose where to sleep, where to eat, what to speak, which clothes to wear. I cannot choose many things. I cannot choose there, he will say. Still something I can always choose. And that's what we will call free will or agency. And he will say, this is the last of the human freedoms. That's what he says, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Sometimes that has been reframed. Probably he said that somewhere, though I never was able to find the exact source for that. But he will say, and it's one of his most famous attributed quotes, he will say, between stimulus and response, there is a space. Between stimulus and momentum and my response to that, to what comes as a stimulus, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So that's what I will personally translate as free will, which again doesn't mean I can do anything and everything. It's not that I can just jump from the window and start to fly in the sky. How free will, how free is my will? That's another. But at any given moment, either as a conditioned soul, under the influence of the gunas, under karmic momentum, there's still that space of choice. It may not be the most enlightened choice, the most informed choice, the most well-guided choice, but there's still choice. And that's what Jiva Goswami refers to as kartritva. So I will say, and you can feel perfectly free, Kanupriya, to disagree with me. I'm not trying here to convince you of my points. We are having a conversation here. So based on what Krishna, Krishna the Bhagavad Gita said, every given action is an array of participants. Basically, whenever we take an action, there is the influence of God in our life, our own influence, the influence of the guna, certain karmic momentum, the influence of other people around us. So there's not just one single thing happening every time you make an action. There's a whole combination of factors. So still we have free will. Again, that doesn't mean that I'm just carried away and I have no choice whatsoever. So I'm reading there, what Teresa is saying, what? Our options might be restricted, but our will to choose between those options remain free. So again, going back to what Viktor Frankl said, his options were quite restricted. But still he found, I can take a choice. I can choose how to deal with this, how to confront this particular situation. Always. I can always choose that, and therefore I can always find purpose and meaning at any given situation. And again, he will conclude that the purpose of life, the goal of life is purpose and meaning, actually. He will say, not happiness. Because sometimes you don't have happiness, but you always have purpose and meaning. So I will say that on one side, related to where we are now, most of us as a mixed bag of conditioning and enlightenment, because we are not technically bhada jivas, conditioned souls only, because bhakti has come to our lives, but we are not neither siddhas or perfected beings. We are kind of in between. We are sadhakas. So we have a choice. At any given moment, we have a choice. Though the options may be restricted due to previous choices or other factors, but still there's always some ability to choose in one direction or the other. And that space in between, as Viktor Frankl will say, is what we can call free will, agency, kartritva. Now, let's go to the other two sides. When it all began, quote unquote, and when we reach the goal, quote unquote, because you can always reach the goal deeper. But let's say you develop pure love for the divine, you become a premi bhakta, you attain Golok Vrindavan. Let's speak in these terms. It doesn't mean that your choices are over. Actually, I will say, now your will became free in every sense of the term. And now you are fully enlightened and informed and equipped and empowered to choose in the most rich and deep and loving and sensitive possible way. So that's in Golok Vrindavan. It's not that everyone is going to Krishna and asking him, what should I do today? Tell me. No. Order me or guide me. Nobody speaks to Krishna like that. Right? Like when Krishna is sitting with his friends, with his gopas, and he's tasting, they are tasting the lunch packs that everyone brought from their house. It's not that everyone is eating the same thing that Krishna likes most, because that's Krishna's favorite. That should be our favorite. They have their own tastes. They have their own individuality, their own will. So they like some things more than other things. And that's fine. It's not that that's against loving Krishna. Again, that's the conclusion of the Gita, right? Krishna speaks the whole Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And at the end, he tells Arjuna, okay, now you decide what to do. If we will have no free will, that section will be basically meaningless. Krishna wouldn't say decide what to do, because if we have no free will, that verse wouldn't be there. But that's almost in the conclusion. After the whole sharing is there, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you please now choose. Like affirming you have the ability to choose in one direction or the other. So again, when we become fully enlightened, that's, I will say, when our agency, our capacity to choose will be expressed in the most clear, pure, deep, profound, loving way. So it's not, I wouldn't say that we stop having free will. We have no free will at that stage, but that our will and agency is as free as possible, as it can. And regarding where it all began, because you presented that hypothetical scenario, and that's a whole different conversation. We have touched about that a little bit in the past. And I acknowledge many times that there are differences of opinion in the Gaudiya Vaishnava community about this topic, which I admit is a complex one. Because you spoke about where it all began, and we coming from the Tatastha Shakti and choosing between going to Radha and Krishna and coming here. We clearly chose to come here. But if we study scripture in detail, nowhere it say that we fell from Tatastha Shakti, because Tatastha Shakti is not a place. We are Tatastha Shakti. Tatastha Shakti is who we are as Shakti, as energy. There's not like a planetary dimension called Tatastha Shakti. So what scripture teaches, and again, I'm not saying this will be an easy one. Neither option is an easy one, but I will say this is the least problematic, even though it's inconceivable in its own way, is anadi karma. That's what Shastra says over and over again. Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, you name it, all of them will speak about karma's anadi. Anadi means without beginning. So our experience in connection to matter has no beginning. And of course, I can see all of you spitting smoke through your ears now, because you are trying to think about something that has no beginning, right? Our mind works in linear fashion, right? Like it's point A, point B, and I'm not saying no beginning. Like, how can something have no? Well, you have no beginning to begin with, right? As we say, the soul is eternal. That basically means you have never started. You have never been created. That's you cannot capture that in your mind, between your ears. But that's the teaching. Material nature has no beginning. It's an eternal energy, exists. I mean, this is the basic framework. And I know I'm going a little bit to another side, but it's in connection to something you mentioned in the question. God is eternal. God exists. Krishna exists without beginning. Anadi, Radir, Govinda, Sarva Karana Karana. And God exists eternally along with his Shaktis. It's not that Krishna existed and then on day 2 Maya Shakti came into existence, on day 3 Jiva Shakti, on day 5 Sarup Shakti, or whatever order. There is no such sequence. We have God exists eternally with Shaktis. Parashya Shaktir Bhividhaiva Shruyate, says the Upanishads. Brahman, the Absolute, is endowed with potency, with Shaktis. Tatastha Shakti, Maya Shakti, Sarup Shakti. These are the 3 main ones, and all of the other ones exist as an expression of those. So God exists without beginning, Maya Shakti exists without beginning, Sarup Shakti exists without beginning, and we, Jiva Shakti, exist without beginning. So nothing has a beginning in time. It's not created from nothing. So Baladevi Devbhushan makes this point when he comments, and just to give one of many references, Bhagavad Gita chapter 13 verse 20, which speaks about material nature as anadi, use the word anadi, without beginning, says since material nature is without beginning and the souls are without beginning, therefore the relationship between the two of them must be without beginning. And that's what we call karma, the glue that ties soul with matter, so to say. It's anadi. So all this to say, there is, in my understanding of scripture, and I again acknowledge some other Vaishnavas may have a different point of view, and the burden of the proof is with them, I will say in this case, to demonstrate their points based on the scripture, and it's totally fine. It's always open space to have healthy dialogue, even if we disagree. But that's basically what scripture says. There's no beginning point in which and I made the whole entire podcast with Navaras, I think it was the second one a few years ago on this. No, first discarding the idea that we fell from Golok Vrindavan, because that's another idea that devotees entertain, at least in certain circles. You were once, all the jivas on all the universes and multiverses were at one point with Radha and Krishna, but somehow all of us at some point became envious or were curious and want to explore something outside of the excitement of what's going on there, and all the zillions of us fell from there. Well, that's an ongoing tragedy in the spiritual world, right? Imagine zillions and zillions, like, oh, falling. You cannot call that place Vaikuntha, right? Without anxiety. No? You're losing members at every given moment. Anyhow, that's not in Shastra, to be honest. Though I can understand how that's said or embraced for particular reasons. It gives an idea of home and coming from there, and we have to return. It works in an operative way, works for how we think about things, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily Siddhanta. And sometimes, the idea of having chosen at some point being in Tatastha Shakti, whatever that may be, between the two things. But again, that brings a lot of questions, because if there was some original point where I chose to come here and to go there, but I had no prior experience of neither of both places, what's the value of my choice? I mean, if I have no clue, it's like gambling, basically. Golok Vrindavan or material world, let's go there. That's not how you attain the spiritual world. It's not just like by random moving your finger and gambling. You have to really choose one thing or the other. So what scriptures say, and again, I'm not saying this is easy to understand, but we are Nityabada. That's the expression in the scripture, which more specifically will be Anadibada. We had been in connection with material nature from time without beginning, which doesn't mean there is no end to that. And we are in that process now. So anyhow, sorry if I detoured a little bit, but that was part of the question. The main point was free will. So I will say that basically, according to scripture, free will or agency or kartritva, whatever word we want to use, entails this ability to choose, no matter how covert or enlightened we are. And we have had that ability from time without beginning. And the fact that we are here or still here or however you want to think about it, that's not canceling the free will for me, but actually that's confirming that you are having at every moment given the decision making, you are endowed with that. I mean, it's intrinsic to us. And we have a great capacity to choose in a certain direction for so many times over and over again. So it shouldn't surprise us if we can choose in the same direction. I mean, pay attention to your mind, how many times your mind goes to the same place over and over again, and many times to a very useless, catatonic, repetitive, boring place over and over again in a few minutes. So that's an example of how much we can choose and not do anything about going somewhere else. So now apply that to in a more macrocosmic level to life after life. But again, boiling all that down to our present moment here and now, the point is we have ability to choose. We are receiving grace, knowledge, association, so many great blessings, and we can dramatically affect our trajectory into eternity, starting by this present moment, by how we choose to express our agency in the here and now. Not a moment ago, not tomorrow, but just now, in this precise moment we are sharing now. So those will be some of my thoughts about it. Again, it's a very nuanced and complex topic that includes many other topics. So it's just a little part, at one point of a big, long line of an ongoing conversation that we should all be having about things like this. So I don't know if that helps, Kanapriya. I hope. Even if we disagree on some points, it can still help. It helped me for sure.
It helped me a lot. Thank you, Maharaj, for this very rich answer. I feel that if making really a choice is the same with free will, I can fully embrace what you did say. I would love to reflect within me how I still feel. Why is it not the same for me exactly? This free will and making choices. And maybe you gave me an inspiration. I would like to think about how free is my will. I would like to reflect on that. How free is my will? And then I have something to do. Wonderful answer. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for daring to present the question. Important one. Thank you. So let's continue churning the ocean of all this together in Sangha for a few minutes in the breakthrough rooms, and see you in a few moments for our last question for today, I think, from Shyam Sundari. So see you in a few minutes. Welcome back from the churning room. Oh, I see Abhinandan also is raising her hand now. I'm in a dilemma because Shamasundar raised her hand also. You raised your hand before in the beginning, then you unraised it. I'm confused now.
Maharaj, if we have time, that's okay. I can
Okay,
ask
we'll
next.
try. We'll try. Yeah, I don't want to make it too long for anyone, but we'll try. So let's go to Shamasundari from Switzerland, and then hopefully we have time to honor Abhinandana's question.
Radhe. Actually, I don't know if because I'm new to this room, and so far they were like more general or personal related question. My question was a bit more technical too. So I don't know if the room is open for any question, even if it's not related to.
Yeah, room is open, 24/7.
My emotions or anything. Yeah, because okay, Winter Hermitage and Krishna Chandra is in Korti Jaska, and so I can't ask him. So I've had this burning question for now 2 weeks.
Okay, let's try to say something in service of Krishna Chandraji. I cannot hear you.
Yeah, so I was first reading Gopi Gita and oh,
Yeah, I can
can
hear
you
you.
hear me now?
It comes with some delay, so that's why. No problem.
I turn off my video because I don't have very good connection here in the mountains.
Okay.
So yeah, I was reading Gopi Gita and as I always understood from Krishna Chandra, the gopis, they have this samskar of being married to their husband, each one to their husband. And they're not really, but they have this samskar in order to increase their bhav. And this is very, yeah, when you read Gopi Gita, you can hear, how they went through all these obstacles to meet Krishna and this having this samskar of having a husband and the in-laws just increases their bhav to just run when they hear the flute. So this was clear to me. And what I always also understood from Krishna Chandra is that the manjaris, they're younger than the gopis and they always serve Radharani since they're also extensions from Radharani. They always serve her lotus feet and they're also younger and that is why they also are in the kunjas and do the very intimate sevas. That's how I always understood. And now I started a few weeks ago to read Vilakusumanjali from Raghunath Das, and I almost had a shock when I was reading that was at the beginning of the verses. There was a little footnote which was suddenly saying that the beautiful Radhi has these clothes and her father is called this and this, and her husband, Jiva. And I'm like, what? And then whether she's married or not, probably it's like the gopis, she's not really married, but she has this samskar. But then I can't think of, I think of it every day, but I can't think of what is the benefit, I don't know what other word to say, of a manjari to have this samskar of having a husband, since she doesn't want to enjoy Krishna by himself. It always also explains in Vilakusumanjali that sometimes Radharani, she's teasing also Ratimanjari, like, oh, why don't you, or sometimes other manjaris, oh, why don't you go and enjoy Krishna, like. And they always say the mantra is, no, I only want to serve you. So what is the need of a mantra to have this samskar if they're constantly serving Radharani and not like the gopis don't have this, I don't know. Do you understand what I mean?
I think so, yeah. Thank you for the question. So, yeah, there are a few considerations there. And let's begin with the sobering fact that, again, not necessarily all Gaudiya Vaishnavas agree on the same level of emphasis in all the things. Like, for example, you mentioned that the gopis in Vrindavan, they have a samskar of being married. Like, so samskar sometimes is translated as impression, right? So they feel like, generally how some Gaudiya Vaishnavas explain it, it's like the gopis in Vrindavan feel like if they are married, well, actually they are not married, but the feeling of being married creates the whole parakya experience of meeting with Krishna as lover, and with all the risks and all the surrender and offering of the heart, as we tried to explore a few weeks ago in some of the articles I wrote on Parakya Bhav. Some other Gaudiya Vaishnavas will actually be more literal and say, no, actually some of those gopis are not, it's not just a samskar, it's not just like a sensation, like a feeling like I am like married. They're actually married, but they are never somehow enjoyed by their husbands, and they are just enjoyed by Krishna. Some others will explain in another way. They will say, actually, they are married, but their husbands are all Krishna. They are expansions of Krishna. They will explain in connection to the Brahma Vimohan Lila, where Krishna, as you know, I won't go into the details of the Lila, right? But when Krishna expands and as the cowherd boys, as the calves, it is told by some acharyas, those expanded cowherd boys eventually married all these gopis that are married with gopas, but actually all those gopas are Krishna. So even if we were to pose that they are enjoyed by these gopas, they are only enjoyed by Krishna. No? So still the rasa is preserved, so to say, the integrity and the dignity of the rasa is preserved. Which the main point in all this is everyone is existing for Krishna's pleasure alone. And this is a whole conversation about also, again, that's another conversation, and I'm actually reading again this beautiful book, Jiva Goswami's Gopal Shampoo. It's very short. You can finish it very quickly, as you can see. Which is, kind of one of my favorite books is Jiva Goswami's, how to say? Final work in the sense of great works, right? The Sandarbhas, of course, are very foundational, but the Gopal Shampoo is very unique. And he makes many statements there about, that's another conversation. But we are talking about Parakiya here, and he will make the point that in Golok Vrindavan, there's Swakiya, not Parakiya, and all the gopis are married with Krishna. Though there is one verse that can be interpreted in a certain way to indicate that actually he meant something else, and there are differences of opinions in the Gaudiya community about that. I'm saying all these little things just to leave you open-minded and not thinking everyone thinks the same way about everything. And that's not the case. So that said, all this that I say all this, but your actual question has to do with the manjaris, right? Which are gopis. In a general way, gopis are all cowherd girls. But there are divisions of gopis that Rupa Goswami has given about sakis and priyanarma sakis and priya sakis, different ages, different forms of feeling. And in general, we hear that the manjaris are of a younger age than gopis, like slightly younger, not that much younger, than elder gopis like Radha, Lalita, and Vishaka, who have more of a direct union type relationship with Krishna. And we hear generally that the manjaris are not interested in having personal romantic loving interaction with Krishna, but facilitating Radha's meeting with Krishna. In brief, that's the general description. And as you say, that generally we hear that they are not married because they are younger, but now you're bringing this evidence that shows something else. That manjaris are married, or at least they have the samskar that they are married, whatever place we want to go. And I will add to that another layer of complexity, since you're reading Bilap Kusumanjali, probably you became aware, because that comes basically in verse 1, when Raghunath Das Goswami, he's spoken by Rupa Goswami, but in his Siddha form, Rupa Manjari to Rati Manjari, about this biting on his lip. And he jokes like, oh, maybe a parrot came and was biting your lip. But actually, that verse can be interpreted as Krishna having kissed Rati Manjari. No? And of course, these are very confidential topics. We have to deal with all this in a very proper way. But I'm just bringing this because there's also, and I had a long conversation with the devotees some months ago, there are devotees in the community who are of the idea that manjaris at times have direct relationship with Krishna. Not as much as other gopis, but occasionally that happens. But they do so for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna. Not so much of their own volition, so to say. But sometimes that happens. Some other Gaudiya Vaishnava will be more strict. Mahavda say that will never happen. Even if Radha pushes on to some manjaris, you gave the example, the manjari will resist and won't accept. But at the same time, there are a few sections in some Rasa Shastra, which could be read as actually they have union with Krishna, again, in the context of divine love, right? So for me personally, to be honest, it's not a problem. It's not that it's like a whole faith crisis I will go through, whether it is one option or the other. Okay, are the manjaris married or not, or what's the purpose? If they are married, maybe that's the main question you have. If manjaris are married, what's the actual purpose of them being married if we were to think that they have no direct contact whatsoever with Krishna, but they are only there to facilitate Radha's union with Krishna? So what difference does it make in their mood to feel as if they are married, if I understood correctly? And if we were to take that stance, we could still make the same point in a slightly different way. The purpose of a manjari, maybe not all, maybe some manjaris being married or having the samskar of being married, adds the unique spice to this masala of paraki above, not in the exact same way, but similar to what the gopis who have direct union with Krishna experience, which is this sense of risk, the sense of belonging to someone else and still being willing to risk everything for the sake of union with Krishna. Of course, the manjaris are not having direct union with Krishna, but still, again, if we think it that way, but still, if we think they have a husband or a samskar of a husband, in that context, somehow or other, I mean, if you read the Leelas and the manjaris are almost all day long with Radha. So of course it's difficult to think, okay, how if the manjari is married, how does the manjari's husband cope with that? Right? His wife is all day outside with Radha, and what's going on there, right? So somehow my point is it all adds some tension to the dynamics of the Leela, in which even if the manjari were not to meet with Krishna directly, if she is married or has that samskar, her dedication to Radha and her facilitating to the union still is happening with this backdrop of she being married or having that samskar. So it adds this spice of risk-taking and skillfulness and expertise in knowing how to navigate all this secrecy, because at the end of the day, Radha Krishna's affair is it's an illegal one, so to say, in the Leela. It's clandestine. Nobody knows. So it has to be a well-kept secret, so to say. So it adds another layer of risk and dedication. And I will say that will be the purpose. If we were to accept that some manjaris are married or have that samskar, that will have the effect in their own bhav, in service Radha, and that will allow them to be more tadatmic, to be more empathic with what Radha is going through, because Radha is married to Abhimanyu, whether we want to take that literally or as a samskar, but still that's there. That tension, that situation is there. So by the manjaris having some similar background, if we will to consider they are married, they can more easily relate to what Radha is going through, and by that relatedness and empathy, they can serve her needs in a better way. So that's what I can say for today. But please, you let me know whenever you meet Krishna Chandra Prabhu, what else came. Share those secrets with us as well. Thank you so much. Okay, so since Abhinandan also raised her hand, and we have a few more minutes, I trust your generosity in time, and you can stay with us for a few more minutes. And generally, we skip a few breakout rooms during the meeting, so we can skip this one, and we can go straight to Abhinandan's question, and then we can conclude with a breakout room before closing today's meeting. So you can unmute yourself. Abhinandana, welcome.
I'm so sorry, Maharaj. I didn't notice time go by, but
Fine. I'm so sorry. I'm addressing your question at the last, since you're in India, and it's the latest for you than all of us. You should have gone first. Sorry.
Maharaj, my question is actually I was listening to this. You were telling in a section about how noticing the thoughts and not like a stream or a ship or a stream, not really getting carried away by them.
Okay.
I think it was a contemplative prayer, and I'm not trying contemplative prayer, but that was on my mind, and what I was trying to ask is, I had a kind of thought like probably 3 years ago, and I didn't really feel I thought it was not right. So I used to chant more and pray that it goes away. I mean, now it feels a bit immature, but it did go away. But then I feel that maybe that was not the right approach. Maybe to give space and to let that thought come. And but there's a lot of restriction, and I can feel it. Like I can feel it physically, and but we need to let that restriction move. Um, but then I wanted to like I was trying to let that restriction go slowly. It's not yet fully gone, but then um, when I feel that rather than trying to think it as right or wrong, maybe to try and see if why am I thinking is this right or wrong, or trying to explore, because it's very repetitive. It's very I don't know, when it comes in, my body kind of paralyzes or something. And I mean, now it's better, but then I feel like I have to think about from where is this really coming. And I don't know if you were talking about this person, Thomas More.
Thomas, what?
Thomas More.
I cannot hear you properly, actually, very well. So I'm not sure if I'm really hearing properly the surname of that person. But it's okay, no problem.
The author of Care of Soul and
No.
okay. So he also talks about how to explore these thoughts rather than fixing them. But I'm not sure what explore means here, or if I'm doing the right kind of exploring. So how do I, is the question a bit?
It's not entirely clear for me what's the actual question. If you could summarize that into a question, if it's possible.
Maharaj, should I just let the thought flow, or is it okay to think about or explore into where is this coming from, or is it just a thought that I should just let it flow, or what does explore mean here? Is it trying to, I mean, it doesn't work for every thought, but maybe a few thoughts which are probably disturbing, to explore where is this actually coming from. And
Well, of course, again, I have to start with the the typical answer to many questions, which is it depends. It depends which thoughts we are talking about. Some thoughts, as I said before, many times in our mind, our thoughts are very repetitive. And still we can explore them, we can see from where they are coming, but many times we can just let them continue their way, especially if you are giving me the scenario when you're chanting, like for example, your daily moment of prayer and meditation. So I'm trying to sit with the sweet absolute. I'm trying to commune, trying to bring presence. So many thoughts may come. And probably that's not the moment to explore my thoughts, because you will have 3,000 thoughts in a moment. So if you go to explore each one thought, you stop chanting altogether, you stop praying, because so many times, at least in certain moments, you may just let the thoughts continue. Like if there will be a current, and each thought is like a ship, like a little boat in the current, and instead of sticking with the thought, you just let the thought continue. At least for that particular moment of the day. Of course, if during the day the rest of the day you're having certain thoughts, especially as you mentioned, they are disturbing or repetitive. Of course, you can spend some time with them and question, okay, where this is coming from? What is this trying to tell me? What's behind the thought? Because many times the thoughts are just symptoms, are not the actual thing. They're just like indicators. So exploring that could be an idea. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm talking in general. We are not addressing any specific situation. But let's say you are thinking about, I don't know, I don't like such person, whatever, whomever that person may be. So exploring the thought will be, okay, why I don't like that person? As we were talking before in my sharing with Kanupriya, the first Kanupriya. I don't like that person, or I feel the need to take a distance from that person. Why? It's about the person, it's about me, it's about both. Why? So that's exploring the thought. It's not just intellectualizing everything. The exploration is not limited to our head, but hopefully it's more grounded than that. But again, behind many thoughts that we may entertain, there is a whole constellation of things. And the thought is just a point that is indicating something. And yeah, many times we need to be introspective. Now, these are some of the qualities that Krishna emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita about not only his devotee, but about someone situated in Satvaguna, for example. It's not that you have a thought and you immediately act out on the thought. There is a space in between, as we were talking before, free will, right? Between stimulus and response. So you take a time. Okay, why I'm thinking the things, whatever that may be. Again, as I said before, probably in your question there is something more personal, more specific, certain thoughts, certain patterns. This may not be the place to address them in a public forum, but I hope you can apply what I'm saying in a more specific case, because we all have that, of course. There are certain ideas. Like we were talking, let me go to an extreme. Some people, unfortunately, sometimes think, I may need to kill myself. That's a thought. That may begin as a thought. It's not a plan. It's not an action. It's not something I'm actually considering repeatedly. Start like one thought. Kill yourself. Okay, let's explore that. Explore that doesn't mean hopefully I end up killing myself. But exploring that means, what does this thought trying to tell me? Many times it's our unconscious speaking in certain ways, and we need to articulate that properly. So suicidal thoughts are never ultimately about killing yourself. They are about the need for something to die inside of us. But it's not you. It's a certain way of seeing things. It's a certain way of feeling. It's a certain version of ourselves that needs to die for something to be born. But you need to explore the thought to reach that conclusion rather than killing yourself. Just to give an extreme example, of course. Because many times people who kill themselves actually have heard that thought many times, and it gets more and more repetitive and more loud, and they end up enacting the thought, so to say. So we all have many thoughts. Again, we are all, and we are all, as Father Richard Rowe will say, if there's one addiction we all share, is we are all addicted to our thoughts. Most of us are addicted to our way of thinking. So sometimes it's not even what we are thinking, but how we are thinking about things. Because you can think about everything in a healthy way, and you can think about everything in a non-healthy way. Everything can be a conspiracy against you. If you have if we have a toxic, unhealthy pattern, whatever happens, we will think of that as a threat, as something against us. And if we have a healthy pattern, whatever we think will be from a different perspective. So there's no problem with thoughts. It's not that it's bad to have thoughts, but we have to think about our thoughts. No, that's not the same thing, right? To have thoughts, I mean, that's easy. Everyone is bombarded with stuff in their own heads on a daily basis now more than ever, with social media and digital dynamics and anyhow. So having thoughts, mind is talking all day. But to think about the thoughts, that means to become thoughtful. Thoughtful is not the same to be full of thoughts. Right? We are all full of thoughts. We have too many thoughts, actually. We are overstimulated in our age. So we, in one sense, we should need to practice under stimulation. At one point, that will become the real stimulation. The real stimulant is to be under-stimulated, to be more minimalistic in how much stuff we allow to enter our heads, whether it is through, social media or all the input that is happening all day long around us. So again, to be full of thoughts doesn't mean to be thoughtful. Thoughtful means whatever is happening inside of me, I'm taking the time to consider, where is that coming from? Where is that going to? Why is this here? What can I do if I don't like some of these ideas? Okay, what to do with them? This takes time. Most people it's not willing to take time to do that. As I say before, most people is not willing to get to know the other person. Most people do not care to love each other. Most people do not care to be introspective, to spend time paying attention to what's going on inside of them. Many times we just get carried away by the emotions. Next offer, next stimulus, next this, next that. So practicing spiritual life in one sense is gaining sovereignty. How do you pronounce the word? Yeah. On yourself, right? Gradually, again, going back to free will, to choose what you want to think, to choose consciously, I want to go in this direction. It's not that I ended up there because I was carried away by force. And it's a gradual process again. So during practices of chanting, praying, meditating, when we see our mind flooded with thoughts, a good thing to say is just to go back to whatever, our mantra, our sound, our prayer, our presence, and conceive all the thoughts as boats in the river and let them continue their journey. No? It's not the moment to pay attention to them at that moment. I'm not saying we are repressing or bypassing them. It's not the moment at that time. But then we will address it at some point. Okay, why this is knocking on my door today, yesterday, again and again? What's behind that? And explore that. Explore that in good company. At least those things that we feel are significant enough, that are affecting my life in one way or another, that really are begging for exploration. Again, I'm talking in a very general way. This is, for me, the dilemma when answering this type of questions that are totally fine, the questions, but I cannot be super specific because we are not addressing any specific situation or case, which can be done in a more private way. But here we can just speak more generally and trust the discernment of the audience to apply some of the things to their own particular situation. I don't know if that helps, Abhinandan.
Yes, Maharaj, it helped a lot. Because I really was during chanting, yes, I don't really go there. I mean, at least consciously, I don't go and explore my thoughts, but these were coming apart from that during the day. And so I didn't know, I didn't know if I had to, but thank you so much.
Again, thoughts, sometimes they give numbers of how many thoughts we have per minute or per day, and there are millions, literally. So if you were to make a list of each one of your daily thoughts, you will be overwhelmed at how much capacity we have with all of that, or ideas. But again, sometimes there are just information passing through. So to become thoughtful is to have the capacity to stop that endless flow and take at least one thought, because you're gonna try to think about all your thoughts all at once. Now you go crazy, you explode. So at least to re-educate the mind and create some input and pattern. Okay, let's pick one thought and let's be thoughtful at that one thought. And let's go deep about that and see the background of it. There are many more here. They will be attended in time. But let's pick some thought that we see it's recurrent. There seems to be a pattern there. Many times there seems not to be a very healthy pattern. So it's a thought that is not taking me to very healthy places. To give an example. Okay, what's that thought? So let's dissect that thought. Hopefully with proper company. Sometimes we need feedback from peers. What's behind that? And what's behind that? Like these Matrushka dolls. Okay, this is the thought. Open. Oh, there was another doll. Oops. Open. And it's another, till you eventually reach the crux of the whole issue. And that may take time. Exploring one particular thought may take time. But if it's a worthy exercise, if we do it sincerely with things that we really need to be thinking about. So that's what it means when we hear many times a devotee is thoughtful. It's not that he or she has a PhD, he's an intellectual genius. It's just someone who is willing to invest the necessary time to think about those things that need to be thought about. And each one of us may need to think about different things, right? In your own particular journey, what's significant? What do I need to pay special attention now? That somehow is reverberating inside of me, is begging attention. And sitting with that, spending time with that, entering into a conversation with that, getting to know each other, so to say, as we do with emotions, with thoughts, emotions and thoughts. One thing is tied to the other many times. So yeah. Thank you. Let's go to a final breakout room before we put the sharing to a conclusion today for a few more minutes for each one of you to continue churning the ocean of today's meeting, and see you in a few moments for our official farewell. There you are back. Welcome from the churning. Hopefully not only the discussion has been churned, your mind, intellect, but your heart as well, and melted in the intimacy and love of each other's company. So thank you so much for joining us one more time, another day in the life. I want to leave you with one quote that somehow came the inspiration to share, which is from a gift, from a picture I have in my altar here. Somehow it came the inspiration. We're talking about chanting and being present. So this is a gift that Father Richard Rohr gave me when I visited him last time. I was in his hermitage. And I was bold enough to ask him, I want to take some, what we'll call in our tradition, Mahaprasad, some remnants from you. So he went to his own things and say, oh, this was given to me when I visited Thomas Merton's hermitage in Gethsemane. So Thomas Merton is a very dear person for me as well. So this comes from Richard's hermitage, which came from Thomas Merton's hermitage. So it has a double hermit credit to it. And it's a quote by Sam Romalt, who was one of the early original desert fathers in Christianity. So it says, sit in your cell as in paradise. So it will be another way of saying, as Prabhupada will say, to engage in devotional services to having achieved the kingdom of God. Right? You do bhakti to achieve bhakti. So when you sit in your cell, Christian will speak about your bhajan kutir, your place for prayer and meditation. Enter there as if you are entering to paradise. We already have arrived there. So let's have a blessed week with that spirit, and embracing our sadhana, our life, our day, our practice, our everything, as if in paradise, because paradise is a state of consciousness. So we just need to tune in. So continuing about tuning in, we'll continue tuning in next weekend as usual. Same time, we are returning to our usual time, being back here in North Carolina. So see you there. May you have a continued blessed beginning of this new Gregorian year. And thank you so much for your presence, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Sadhu Sangha ki jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bol. Vanchakalpatarubhishcha kripasindhubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.